right, welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as valuable as your money, and we know that. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We thank all our subscribers and are excited to bring you a guest session today.
Yes, yeah. Today we are graced with the presence of Kerry Loiselle, 17 years as a, let me see if I get this right, licensed associate real estate broker.
Right.
Yes.
With Sterling Real Estate Group.
Long title and just as important of a job.
That's right. But yeah, we've had a lot of crazy world of real estate lately, going back, and we'll let you speak to it, of course, but with a lot of changes that have happened, not just in our local neighborhood, but across the U.S. And so we're excited to kind of bring an up-to-date, up-to-speed sort of podcast really on the subject to our viewers and listeners.
Yeah, and really that whole industry just blew up after COVID.
Really
in our demographic area especially.
Yeah.
I don't know, there was people racing to get out of New York City or what it was, but we can talk about that today.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell our listeners, kind of where you're from, the group that you work with, and
special areas that you
areas of
specialize
specialties, that type of stuff.
Sure. So our brokerage is located in Ballston Spa, New York. I grew up in Cohoes, currently live outside of there in Pittstown. So I kind of cover all over. I'm not really specific to an area. I like it all. Our capital district is pretty exciting. I do specialize in new construction. I currently have a new development up in Wilton, New York, with Pigliavento Associates. It's fantastic. Saratoga Springs Schools. It's a great place to be.
Yeah.
But as far as, specializing in the new construction, that's one of my favorites. But at the same time, I love working with first-time home buyers. It's very exciting seeing them get their keys to their first dream home and going from there.
That's fun. I was just thinking, 17 years in the business, and I feel like real estate's one of those careers where people think, oh, wow, that's easy. I'm just going to hop right in that. And then they're out 6 months later. And 17 years, that's a real longevity these days in the field. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of changes through that time?
Lots of changes along the way. I started at the first crash when, everything went under, and kind of dug my heels in, did a lot of learning, a lot of educating of myself, meeting people, getting out and, doing as much as I can here and there in the community and whatnot to meet new people, because I didn't really have a big group of buyers and sellers when I first got into the market. I don't think many people did because of the timing. And I just have really piggy-tailed on the back of some really great agents that were out there so I could learn from them. And growing into the new construction, when I joined the Sterling Real Estate Group, Jeff Knox is our broker owner. He specializes in new construction, and he really just made me love it. It's a lot of fun watching something go from dirt to somebody living there.
Yeah.
So the longer you're in it, the more you learn, the more exciting it is. And quite honestly, what brought me into real estate was I just love architecture. So what's more fun than going into people's homes and seeing what everybody has and what it looks like?
Yeah.
So
And that new construction, it is a different beast.
it really is.
I don't know whether, did you guys build? My wife and I built in 2013, 2014, and just learning that whole process of, which lender is going to give you more, draws, for your loan, and when's that due, and when maybe speak to that process a little bit for maybe one of our listeners that has only been on the side of like, I found something I liked and I bought it.
Sure.
Versus many of them, especially in retirement, are transitioning to the, hey, we went that route, now we want something more customizable, right? Like, maybe talk a little bit about that process.
Sure. So I'll speak to our process with Pigliavento. They're actually still doing an end loan. So basically, when you choose the location that you want to be, the floor plan that you want to build, it's a 10% deposit. You go through the process. We're done in 8 months. We're one of the lucky ones. Our builder is pretty good with scheduling.
Yeah.
And you don't pay anything again till the end. There are other builders who do the draw loan where your first significant deposit takes care of the land and getting started with all your permits and the process and all of those things. Then the next draw goes to your foundation, and then the next draw is your structure being put in, and then you go on to the finishing part of it. But when you're doing a draw loan, and I'm not a mortgage professional, so I can't really speak 100% to that, but I do know once you start taking a draw, you're now paying interest.
Right.
Whereas on an end loan, you're not paying anything until you close.
Yeah, and that kind of tells you the size of the builder too. The ones that can usually
Just
do the
thinking the
end
same
loans
thing,
are
yeah.
usually a little bit larger.
Yeah.
That can finance the projects and the subs out before,
Correct.
right?
Yes. Yep. Yes, absolutely. The financing part of it is wonderful when you have a builder that can do it that way. It just gives you 6 months, 7 months, 8 months to save more money towards the closing.
Yeah.
So
I know that a big thing since COVID, since that 2020, was the supply. The demand was there, and I don't just mean, materials to build the houses, where all of a sudden there's delays that people just were not counting on. All of a sudden their kitchen counters and cabinets are taking, instead of 4 weeks, now they're 8 weeks, now they're 12 weeks, et cetera, et cetera. But we've had some changes and some fluctuations with inventory just in terms of homes to buy.
That's correct.
Especially over the last couple of years.
Yes.
What are your sort of thoughts
So
on that?
currently today, we have 2.6 months worth of inventory on the market. What that means is if no new listings were to come on, we would be out of homes to sell in 2.6 months.
Yeah.
Whereas typically you're 6 months.
Sure.
So
Wow, that's
it's a short.
It's significant.
It's a big difference.
Yeah.
With that being said, a lot of those homes, the newer ones that are coming on the market, if location, of course, price, condition, they're still going into multiple offers. We do have some pockets that homes are now sitting on the market for 30 days. Surprising. This morning's stat said that it's 26 days is the longest that the homes have been on.
Wow.
For median.
That's still amazing.
Yeah.
When we bought our house 16 years ago, it was our second house. Our first house that we were trying to sell was on the market for 6 months.
Yeah.
It took 6 months to sell. That was 2008, which was, again, right when that housing crisis was happening.
Well, and the lower inventory rate keeps prices up too.
Yes.
Yeah. It does.
It's more of a seller market at this point. Do you see that transitioning? I mean, the Fed just recently lowered rates a little bit, so it's helped with the mortgage end of things. But in the Capital District area, that the 2.6 months that you were talking about seems a little high compared to where it was maybe 12 months ago.
Yeah, 12 months ago, I think we were like a month or two worth of inventory. And it was really hard and difficult for buyers.
Yeah.
Many of them suffer from buyer exhaustion. I quite honestly, personally, I have buyers I've been working with for at least 2 years. And every offer we've made has gotten beat out by higher offers.
Yeah.
We've gone, some of them $70,000 over asking price and still gotten beat out.
It's amazing.
What are some of the things that maybe our listeners should know? If they're looking at buying a new construction, and let's say, like Pigliamento, for instance, it's usually like a cul-de-sac or a development that they're developing. What are some things that buyers should go into that, negotiation with, saying like, hey, I want this in the house and I want this incorporated, and like, how customizable is it? Is there like, hey, options A through Z? Is there one base option and then you do the add-ons?
So every builder is different. Again, I'll speak to our process. We offer what they call included features. So the builder has incorporated into the price the cost of the land itself, the infrastructure to go along with it, the
Sewer
build.
hookup, electric,
Yeah, and then they offer we'll say a package, so to speak, of the items they're including, whether it's quartz or granite in your kitchen and hardwood floors or luxury vinyl, and so on and so forth. So every builder, for the most part, has that included features. From there, you can customize your home. We have specific floor plans that we offer in a neighborhood. However, say maybe you need a little bit more space in this room, or you want to expand your bathroom this way, or whatever the case may be.
An extra window here.
Exactly. We can do that. And then when you go to do your selections, you'll go, okay, well, these are the standard included features, but these are also options that you can add if you want to. Of course, at cost, there's extra
upgrades,
exactly.
Yeah.
It adds to the end there when you're getting your final mortgage. So what people need to be very sure of is their budget. And no, I can't spend $100,000 on upgrades. I can only spend $30,000, we'll say.
Yeah.
So they have to be, very conscious of their own budget. That's something that's really important because a buyer can price themselves out in new construction if they're not cautious.
Yeah, we like that process when my wife and I built, because we could take from some areas that weren't as important to us and apply those funds to other areas that we thought were more important.
Yep.
So, like for instance, we wanted the taller doors, so we ended up just sacrificing somewhere else that wasn't as important to our family, whether it was with a different type of flooring or whatever in the mudway, versus to be able to get an 8-foot door versus a 6 or something. So
I always tell people when they're coming in and asking me these questions to think about that. What's important to you now? What is something you can do later? Do you have to have a kitchen backsplash right now, or is that something you can do down the line and use that $3,000 to $5,000 towards maybe you want nicer flooring?
Right.
Because flooring is harder to change later than putting in a tile backsplash.
Do you get I don't want to say strange requests, but if someone sees a floor plan or a house plan, is there somebody that says something like, oh, well, can we, instead of doing the garage this way, can we do it this way?
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that.
A side-loaded garage, absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course...
Second floor garage.
Second floor
garage. I want a drawbridge as
Just
a floor.
launch-
Can I
just
just
launch
have is that a moat? Can I get a moat put in
Absolutely.
around my house?
We'll do anything your pocketbook can afford is my favorite thing to say.
Right, yeah. So we said a little bit, Mark I think did at the beginning, but there's been some recent changes in terms of that came about in August. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that?
Well, the biggest change that really came about is how a buyer's agent is paid. Traditionally, a compensation was done through the listing, whereas the seller would offer a certain percentage of compensation that incorporated both the listing and the buying agents involved. Now, and it's always truly been this way, it is a negotiable situation. Everything is negotiable. A seller doesn't necessarily have to pay the buyer's compensation any longer, where now we would have to then go to our buyers and have the buyer pay the compensation, which...
That's a huge change.
It's a huge change.
Yeah.
And it can also hurt a sale in the sense that a buyer... So let's just take an FHA buyer, for example. They're already going to be asking for what we call seller's concessions to help with the closing costs. Well, now... above that 6% that they're going to be asking for, they now have to take into consideration whatever their compensation agreement with their buyer's agent is. So whether that's 2% or 2.5% or 3%, whatever they agreed upon with their buyer's agent, now they have to also add that in, which could make their mortgage costs go too high to be able to afford the home. Yeah. Because we're not really asking a seller to pay these fees. What we're doing is changing the price of the home, say a $200,000 home, now we're mortgaging $230,000, for example.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's just throwing numbers out
when you
there.
look at it, always, looking back on it now, I guess it was I don't want to say conflict of interest, but it was an interesting contract in the sense that you could get a buyer's agent and it didn't cost the buyer anything on that side, but the seller was expected to pay the buyer's agent,
right.
Which when you look at it from that standpoint, now that they changed it, that was a weird relationship where you're paying for another person's, advice, guidance.
Yeah, it is. It does seem a little counterintuitive. And this shift, have you, since this started when August
17th went into effect? Yeah.
So have you How have you seen that been reflected in real world?
Quite honestly, it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Sellers want to sell their home.
Right.
And I will say, there has been a very small handful of people who have said, I'm not paying a buyer's agent.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, but it also leads to a buyer not wanting to buy that house because now they can't afford it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, when we're sitting down with our sellers, the conversation really goes in that sense. This does help us to bring more people in, because those that can't afford to add that extra amount into their mortgage, so to speak, with their compensation, may not be able to see your house. So it's just it's just educating our clients, knowing what's really going on in the world, and being able to portray that onto our clients and let them know how to handle it. And again, like I said, it really hasn't changed. Most all sellers are still offering.
Yeah, and a lot of it probably has to do with the lack of inventory, and between buyers and sellers, and just having very little choices.
Yeah.
So, and when those choices do come about, and it's the house we've always wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they kind of work with that.
Huge change in the industry.
Yeah.
It really is.
What are maybe some things that our listeners can take away? If they're going a new construction around, what are maybe some things they can do to expedite that process of them getting in the home?
So the building process in itself is dependent upon so many things. How quickly you choose your selections, how quickly your mortgage commitment comes together, how quickly supplies are available. If you're doing a really custom home, there's a good chance that your supplies are going to be lagged a little because they're really custom orders. So knowing when you really need to be in your home, knowing what your builder is projecting, and really making sure that they're getting in to get their things done on time. If your lender is asking for paperwork, get the paperwork to them. If your selections coordinator is calling you and saying, I really need you to choose a color, choose a color.
I can't put the floors in until you know the cabinets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because everything that we do is on a very specific schedule for each of our subcontractors as well. So without having those choices, they can't move forward.
Yeah. I always say to my wife, I can only control the things that I can control.
Correct.
And when it comes down to those home projects, I can control, the design or what we want in a certain area, but I can't control the suppliers.
That's right.
Or the subs when the subs.
Or the subs, correct.
Yeah.
So, but it's always probably, just best for the person that's building to be on top of what they can control.
Yeah.
And at least have that satisfaction.
Yeah. There's also, it comes to our towns when it comes to getting our building permits. Some towns are quicker than others. For example, the last neighborhood I did was in the town of Milton. We would have our building permits in 2 weeks. And then one I did prior to that was in Colony. That took sometimes 8 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's really that big portion in the beginning can make or break a timeline depending on how quickly we get our building permits and so on. So,
I was thinking there's one of the similarities in our two industries, right? Are you have the people that rely on the professionals for help, and you have those people that feel that they can do it themselves, right? And I know in real estate, again, we see that for financial advisors. Well, I can manage my own funds and et cetera. But you see it as well when people say, well, I can just sell my house on my own for sale by owner.
right.
What would you say is a good reason why someone should work with someone like yourself?
Sure. So just for example, with selling a home, we'll take it there first. For sale by owner, they have a tent sign in their lawn. They might put it on forsalebywowner.com, and that's about it. When you're working with a realtor, you're having the marketing that's provided by the company. You're also connecting with the 3,700 other agents that are in our area. So the second your listing is made live, everyone sees it. You're also getting the professionalism. You're also getting the education of the agent that you're working with. They're able to negotiate for you. They're able to be there for appointments for you. If you're doing things on your own, you have to be available for every phone call, every appointment. You have to be there to negotiate for yourself, which can be really hard for some people, especially when you're emotionally attached.
That could be a bad conversation when you're showing your house and somebody's picking apart everything wrong with it. I could just see that going
right.
Okay, you can go home now. You know, and then on the other side for buyers, what's important is, again, representation. We negotiate for you. We work with inspectors and attorneys and all of these other people that we can, you know, refer to you as part of the contract's requirements. We're talking with the other agent, and rather than you having to go to that person and feel intimidated because you don't have the education behind you as an individual knowing the market.
It's a world of difference between just knowing that the house a couple doors down sold at a certain price per square foot versus all those other factors that might have gone into why that person, the person who wants to sell their house, is you know, well, they don't know about X, Y, and Z.
Correct.
And that's why that might have sold at that, you know, cost per square foot versus what mine is valued, which is greater than or less than based on the situation.
Correct. You don't know if those people updated every one of their bathrooms and put granite in their kitchen and hardwood floors, whereas you still have laminate and carpet and things of that nature. So yeah, you don't see that, whereas a professional, you know, as a realtor, we do.
Sure. We
see what goes into these homes, and why it's sold for this dollar amount per square foot, and why yours is only going to sell at this amount.
Yeah.
So in your relationship, you know, with the builder and bringing those properties in, how important is the show home, you know, for development?
Well, if any of us could keep a spec home, we call them a spec home or on the books, it'd be great. However, they sell right now. Again, and that's due to lack of inventory. We have builders that will do what they call a spec home, which is they build the floor plan they choose all the features inside the house. Everything is done per the builder's specs, and then they put a price on it and sell it. We used to be able to have open houses and have a model house and have that. So in today's world, it's hard to say because they're gone before they are finished. I have 2 of them in Wilton right now. They're gone before they're finished, which is okay. It's a great problem to have.
Sure.
However, in a traditional world, we'll speak to it that way, it's great to have a model home, to be able to walk through, to show your builder's features, to show your builder's product and their handiwork and, you know, all of those things. And it's nice to show what they can do, you know, give different ideas for people who visually need something to see to make a decision, because it is harder to sell new construction when you're just looking at a piece of paper, because we're looking at a floor plan. Right. We're not physically looking at a building.
Yeah. Yep.
So it takes a little bit more education and being able to speak to it.
It's funny, I still remember I was doing the dishes at our first house, and my wife came in and she said, I found our new house. And I said, where? You know, and it was the spec house that they had in the development that we're in now. And it was the exact design that we ended up being able to purchase just by just the way things worked out. But not the spec house, but the same exact design. And it was, you know, but it's funny because that's exactly what my wife was like, yes, let's get this design.
There were a couple things that we did when we built, which I would recommend to everybody. And the first thing we did, we went around to everybody that had a home and said, what would you wish you had done different?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great
idea.
idea.
And we got a big list of that. And, you know, one of it was making sure that every shower head was one of the wands that came off for cleaning.
Okay.
And it's just, you don't
a simple thing you don't think about,
Yep.
And so we had pieced together this whole list of, like, all the things that people had wished they had put into their home. And we applied a lot of them. But, you know, and then the other thing, too, was when we got the designs of the home, we went out with, like, 1,000 little orange flags on the site and measured them out with this like 300-foot tape measure.
That's
and
great.
Then we realized that the house, which was supposed to be an L, was situated wrong on the property.
Okay.
So we had to go back to the architect and get it actually to 117 degrees to make it fit the property. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that you don't think about with a new construction versus a house that's already there.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. And again, that speaks to also having someone who's educated and helping you and knowing what new construction and how to look at those lines and how to know, okay, well, the setback is X, and the building envelope only allows for a house that's this wide and or this deep. So, again, it speaks to having an educated realtor or somebody representing you in that process.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, we always try to work with other professionals, so it's amazing to have you in today.
Thank you.
I appreciate your insight.
Why don't you tell our listeners how they can find your services, how they can reach out to you?
Sure. Call, text, email. My phone number is 518-322-6650. Or my email is Kerry Loiselle, which is KerryLoiselle, 518@gmail.com. You can also anytime reach out to Sterling Real Estate Group. They'll get you to me.
Fantastic.
Excellent. So
appreciate it.
Yeah, and you can reach Iron Tree Financial at irontreefinancial.com. You can reach us at 43 British American Boulevard in Latham, New York, 12110. You can reach us on the phone, the old telly, at 844-444-YTYM for your time, your money. And as always, it's your time,
your money.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Your Time, Your Money. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to share this with friends, family, coworkers, anyone else that you think might be interested. If you do have questions or topics, you can always email them to irontreefinancial@ceterais.com. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Spotify, Google Play, and many other sources that were available. And you can reach us at 844-444-YTYM. And as always, it's your time and your money.